Welcome everybody to a new episode of Something Epic. I am super excited because now we get to talk about a game that has been taking up a lot of my time, giving me lots of love for being an old man who loved 80s cartoons. This month we get a chance to talk about Mythforce with project director Luke Rideout and CEO of Beamdog. We have Trent Oster. I am excited to have you both here. First of all, thank you so much for being here. I know, you have been cranking out content. You've been making the game. It's been a long time coming. I had heard about the game from a friend of mine who was like, hey, Ka, you have this really dope game that reminds me of He-Man and the Thundercats and everything that you grew up with in a game called Mythforce. You got to check this thing out. I got a chance to play it, and I am in love with what you've made. It is fantastic and super, super great. I want to give you both a chance to kind of talk about, the game and how this thing came to be. This is a game in which it kind of settles into this aesthetic that we haven't seen probably really ever since something like super, super old, like Space Ace kind of spaces of games, Dragon's Lair kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Trent, I'd love to hear your thoughts about how we got here. How did this conversation come to be, and how did the game start to get made?
Well, we set out with this concept that rather than making what we've done historically, which are these kind of it's like a big orchestral piece of music, what if we went the opposite way? What if we took it and we stripped it back, old school power trio? You got a guitarist, you got a bassist, you got the singer, and he's the drummer, and we're all gonna go hard at it. So what's the most stripped down, fun dungeon crawl adventure we can make? And that's really what the essence of Mythforce is. It's this idea of it's a stripped down dungeon crawler with your friends. Let's jump in, let's have fun, let's get rid of all the BS that stops games from being fun. Let's just all rock and roll, no filler. And we started experimenting with this idea of, okay, what does that look like? How does that play? What is it like? And actually Luke brought forward the cartoon aesthetic. And off the start, we were like, gee, that sounds like a really bad idea, because that's going to cost a ton of money, man. Like, we got Unreal, and it makes things look really good and photoreal and does all this lighting stuff, and it looks great. And you're telling me you want to take that and you want to gut it so that we flat shade everything and we're making it look all cartoons. Like, one, I think you're crazy. Two, it's going to cost a ton of money. And three, I don't know if we got time for it. So from the time we started the project on the budget till the project is planned completion, we are officially going to be 6x our original estimates. So yeah. We've jacked up the awesome so many times that we call it's kind of like the Hope Index. Oh. How good can this game be? And every time the Hope Index comes in and you're like, man, this could be amazing, the Hope Index goes up and your willingness to invest in the product goes up. And that's really the story of Mythforce. Is we had this core idea of multiplayer fun dungeon run and the 80s aesthetic layered onto it, and the roguelite and the procedural, you put it all together, and our Hope Index on it is through the roof because we think this has amazing potential. You can play it with your friends, you can play it with your kids. We had a game session going. Cam's 5-year-old daughter jumps in, sits on his lap, she takes over, and she's playing the character, and she's like, you go kill that skeleton. You go over there and get that spellcaster guy. And we were having a great time. Like, I'm like late 40s at the time, and she's 5, and we've got a 30-year-old in there and another like late 20s person. So it's like this gang of various ages just having a good time. And because it's all cartoon, like the violence is all cartoon, it's totally age accessible. So we kind of made this game that's actually really fun, and almost anybody can play it. So
I love that.
It's really hit it for us.
I love that. And Luke, I want to dig into that part of the conversation too, because I think you know, you having this crazy idea to dig into this very specific aesthetic, which I think, again, it just harkens back to this time that brought me a lot of joy. Like, you know, the world was kind, you know, no one jumped into my DMs because I had no DMs. It was a time, it was a time in which everything was pure. But talk about
it was
what
easier
it was
to not know that things were bad back then. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you had to kind of seek out some of the bad stuff, or it was kind of in there. But it was like, you know, when you decided to kind of pitch this layer to the rest of the team to say, let's go 80s cartoon, what was the process there? Not only in the kind of like getting the yeses, but when you had that aha moment, what was that like for you?
Well, I mean, like, I'm a turbo nerd. I grew up as a really introverted kid, and so I spent a lot more, well, I guess a lot of us in the games industry, we spent a lot of time playing video games and watching cartoons as kids, right? I was born in 1980, so I was there for like the earliest home console generations, and fortunately, my dad was cool with that, so he would, you know, give us the opportunity to play those because we had them at home. But having grown up on 1980s pop culture and the cartoons, it's something that's always been kind of near and dear to my heart. I don't know if I move my camera up a little bit, you can see I have like He-Man cells on my wall. So a bit of a collector, but really for me, I wanted to do something that was different from what is in the industry at the time. We started this project 2 and change years ago, so things have continued to kind of shift a little bit. But back then, like, it was all like Overwatch and Fortnite, right? This sort of almost Pixar-y kind of feel, and that was something that we were exploring early on. But I've worked on a number of projects over the course of my career, and always found that the ones that did the best were the ones that tried something different. And fortunately, I think Beamdog might have been the only company where this could have flown, because Trent was right the whole time. Like, when he says like Luke was crazy, this was not something that Unreal does well. You know, it would be an enormous investment. None of those statements were false at all. But fortunately, Trent also has a very high tolerance for my nonsense, so he managed to keep us going, and we invested in it. Well, I pitched the 1980s aesthetic, and I was told that was a bad idea, but I was also given the opportunity to say, no, please just let me try this, give me a little bit of time. And I think you gave us 2 months, 3 months, so I had an art director and I had a technical artist, and that was it at the time, really. We had a graphics programmer and a couple of other programmers who could like start to kind of fiddle around and see what a first-person dungeon crawler could feel like. But somehow we managed to get a prototype of that 1980s cartoon aesthetic character on almost like a blur paint. There's this thing called a Kuwahara filter that we remember that one, Trent, that we built into the environment. We eventually just gave up on it because it was really not performant at all, but it was enough to kind of go, okay, we kind of get what you're going for here. And somehow I've managed to, every time I've had a really bad idea, still through the grace of my team's talent, prove that it's still something that can potentially work. So
I love the fact that you had those early conversations and you were like, all right, so how do we potentially get here? How do we kind of think about the technology at the foundation of it, using Unreal Engine as the kind of, you know, driving force and what's kind of pushing this forward? Is that a part of the conversation, just saying like, well, we know this engine is really malleable in lots of different ways. We really just need to kind of dig into it to see, you know, what's possible in that space? Because I was amazed when I was like, holy crap, you've nailed all of those kind of visual, layers. Oh, this is also on Unreal Engine. How did they get from here to here? Was that a part of the conversation going in? Was that a thing where you needed help from other devs? Was that a conversation of like, oh no, we have to like take this thing apart and rebuild it to make it do what we want to do?
Well, we're kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Like, these things have been done in some form or another before. What we looked at was like the accomplishments of studios like Arc System Works, who do the Guilty Gear series, because they've done fantastic things with cell shading in a more anime style. So we went, well, what can we extrapolate here? How can we make this look like this? And fortunately, we've got a team that sort of has the gumption to try and make it work. So it took some time and effort, but we also knew that the Unreal Engine is very malleable. It's good for prototyping. It's good for bringing a game to market as well. So thanks to it being open source and us being able to fiddle around at the engine level, and also because Blueprint made it relatively easy for us to prototype gameplay mechanics, we figured out relatively early that as long as we stuck to our guns and kept trying, we would be able to accomplish what we set out to do. Admittedly 6 times later than we expected originally, but we got here eventually.
But I think one of the key things to call out is that what makes a game great is when the team loves it.
Yeah.
And when they love the concept and they love the things about it. And it's the reason that we're willing to invest in Luke and the team is they felt really invested in this. And they really wanted to make it happen. And when you've got that much positive energy behind something, you really want to support it. You want to let it flow. And you want to give it the space so that it can organically grow into something bigger and better. And to me, that's how you make the best company. That's how you make the best teams, is you give them that fertile soil that they can grow in, and you give them space to grow, and you let it go. And what was surprising to me is every step along the process, when we looked at it and we said 80s cartoon, the harder we stepped into 80s cartoon, the better it got. And we just kept taking another step forward, another step forward. It's like, yes, this is what this game needs to be. This game needs to be you and your friends playing a 1980s Saturday morning cartoon dungeon crawl adventure. And every time we embraced that sentence, the game got better. Every time we walked away from that sentence, it got worse. And the team just loved the concept and loved the idea and were able to execute because they saw what they wanted to do. And I think Luke kind of skimmed over it. Like, these people went deep into what makes an 80s cartoon look like an 80s cartoon. It's like, how was it built? Why was it built? What were the economic trade-offs that caused flat shading on characters? Why were they doing this? And in many cases, it was economics were driving this. But for us, it's the opposite. It actually costs us way more money to do that simplistic treatment that made economic sense for them to do. But for us to nail that look and feel, it was very important. And in the end, we're just over the moon with the results. I mean, we've made a really fun game that looks really different from what other people are offering. And it's very accessible. You can jump in and just start having fun with it.
I mean, Trent, you keep nailing these things that makes you just want to talk to you both about 80s cartoons all day. And especially, like, if you have someone on the team who loves Captain N, I will automatically give them money. I'm like, here, you like Captain N? I will give you money because I love that cartoon with my whole heart.
My favorite, just barely 80s to be
just,
fair.
Yeah,
but,
just barely 80s. Still towards the
1989. September, I think so, but.
Absolutely.
I think it still counts.
Oh no, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I was going down a big long list of 80s cartoons the other day with stuff, and then bought a Bally Astrocade because I'm old. But I want to dig into that conversation about the gameplay elements of it. You have these archetypes around these very kind of like iconic archetypes, not only within, lots of game lore, but especially kind of in that 80s spirit. But you've also added this roguelite layer of the gameplay, which I think is the most interesting parts of how you wrap those two things together, how you make that kind of sandwich there. How do you, when you're thinking about making a game like this, how do you lean into that aesthetic in those kinds of archetypes in that way, but also balance it out when you have, four folks playing together across these elements that are consistently and constantly changing? How do you mash up those things so that you have great experiences for players?
With great difficulty, but
with a theory, you start with a theory, and then the first experiment is a colossal failure, but it points to the next experiment, which you then do, and then points to the next failure. So it's just a cascade forward of, you have a vision of what you want to attain, and you essentially have to experiment and find your way to it.
Yeah, the game was a series of wouldn't it be great ifs. It started out as a roguelike. Like the concept of what we were going to do as a project was first person melee roguelike. And that was it. Character customization, just choose your class, simple character, no sort of cartoon element or anything like that to start with. The addition of specifically unique characters and, narrative elements and things like that all came later, after we really decided, like, okay, the 80s thing is working. Let's go all in. So that, and so we sort of almost had the benefit of starting in the roguelike and just going, okay, so this is going to be very roguelike. I think early on, my sort of idea was like, what if NetHack was in 3D? We've kind of gone a lot more to sort of the action side of things, where NetHack was very strategic, very sort of slow paced. Not to say that we're fast paced either, but we sort of added more, and every time that we added something that we felt was really good, we would tune it up and make sure that it kind of fit, and then we would go, okay, but now that we've got these interesting characters and they've got this one ability, it's not driving enough uniqueness into the character. So how do we do that? Well, okay, what about 3 special abilities? What about, building a kit out for each character, but still be, true to the roguelike in making sure that they could be, they could equip each of the pieces of gear that was available in the level. So if you had to pivot, if you were playing Victoria the Knight, but all you were getting was spellcasting perks and spell books, you could still win a run if you were good enough. So that was, lots of trial and error, lots of balancing passes, which we are still doing even in early access, and we'll continue to do for quite a while. But yeah, I think Trent really has the right of it. We thought that we had an idea. We make a hypothesis. We test it. It fails spectacularly, and we pivot.
Yeah, I guess that leads directly. Oh, go ahead, Trent. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, like, we always set out with intent.
Yeah, there's
an intent to make a thing happen, and specifically with our characters, each of them had a flavor that we wanted to pursue. Like, to me, Rico he's the boom and zoom. He is come in, hit hard, and get the hell out. And sometimes he's not so good at get the hell out, which causes me to die a lot. But that's me. But every character kind of had that theme and that idea of how you can optimally play this character. But with the roguelite and the random perks and abilities you get, it can pull you out of that core capability and into another direction, which just makes this variety of gameplays completely different every time. Like, you can fire up and you're like, I'm a hardcore Rico and I'm getting all this mace stuff. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to switch up. I'm going to go mace and I'm going to be a stun lock guy. I'm going to stun people and I'm going to use my speed to move, but I'm going to be setting people up for the other people in my party, as opposed to my usual move, which is I'm like special forces. My job is take out the big bad, get in there, hit it hard, and get the hell out. And I think by setting out with this kind of clear intent of what we wanted to happen, we made really informed experiments, and we were always tuning towards a goal and not just randomly kind of experimenting in space. There was always a roadmap in our heads on where we were going towards.
I really dig the fact that you just hit that layer of it, because it makes me want to ask you about how has early access been for the game. I think it's always one of those interesting spaces in which, you know, the decision is made to go, this is the way we're going to kind of deploy a game to the community. In like a different way, it is such a much longer kind of initial tale that you're gathering in all this good info about how players are playing, what they're seeing, things they like, what they don't like. How much of that is kind of informing the next layers of stuff that you're already kind of connecting to your roadmap? You already have that kind of figured out, but how are you pinpointing and kind of injecting some of that feedback into that part of the pipeline too?
Yeah, so far it's been great. I mean, the first experiment, the first launch into early access was, will people like this?
Yeah.
Like, we spent a lot of money. Oh God, I hope people like this. And the response was overwhelming. People loved it. It's different. It looks different. It plays different than other games. So the response was really positive and really great. And the secondary thing that came out of it was a lot of the feedback we got was direct confirmation on the feedback we had gathered internally and from our friends and family playtests of, here are the specific weak points that we are aware of and we have a plan to address. So thank God our roadmap is reasonably accurate for the next little while. But then we started to see things that we never anticipated, like the ability to kick a player because they go AFK. Like, that didn't happen in the office. It didn't happen in a family and friends playtest because it's kind of a dick thing to do.
Yeah.
But people are dicks sometimes, and we have to support that. So we need to make the experience good for people who are playing the game with people in random. So we need to kind of fix those spots. Like, I think every game developer comes into this context of launching their game in this wonderful, open, optimistic feeling, and you want to deliver the best great experience, and then you get confronted with how people actually use it, and you're like, okay, we didn't see that, and we got some big blind spots that people pointed out to us. We're like, oh yeah, we need to fix that. And at the same time, there was things that we had prioritized a little lower that fans came in and said, no, this is actually really important. And we looked at it and we're like, they're right. Yeah, we should have prioritized that higher. So let's push that up. And there's been a couple features which were like, wow, we totally didn't even think of that. And I'm glad those kind of suggestions pop up. Yeah. And it causes a lot of discussion. And like we have like drag out fights about, well, what does this really mean? What is it supposed to be? This feedback, I hate this thing. What does that mean? Is it because they actually hate the thing, or is it because they're too weak at that point? Is it because they show up with little health? What's going on? Like, there's 1,000 parameters. It's kind of like being a doctor, and you're diagnosing the illness from all of the various symptoms that are provided to you. And it's definitely a challenge, because you want to capture the intent. What caused the person to give this feedback? What was the exact thing that set this off? Because it's so easy to misattribute.
Luke, any thoughts towards that as well?
Oh, I mean, yeah, Trent is 100% right there. The real the instinct is to overcorrect. The instinct is to take the feedback and go, okay, yes, we should do that right away. This stamina is too punishing, so we should fix it. We should make stamina better. But, what is better? And why are people doing so poorly at managing their stamina in the game? People want to have more control over their perks. They want the game to feel less roguelike. Do they really? Or are we just not giving them enough opportunities for pivoting mid-session to be better? Right? And it's a real question. It's that triage, right? It's that figuring out what the root cause of the problem is, as opposed to listening to what they're saying, listening to what they're meaning. you know,
Mm-hmm.
because we've gotten some great engagement from our community, especially in the Discord. For the projects, a couple of really dedicated members of the community that are talking to us every day. We have a suggestions board in the Discord where people can say like, hey, I think this would be cool, or I hate this thing that you're doing right now. And we read through all of it, and we stay quiet on that channel because we just want players to talk amongst themselves, because it's great to see then, you know, if other players jump in and they start to sort of mutate that conversation, or, you know, talk someone down off a ledge about something they hate about the game or whatever. But it's helped us to really kind of frame a couple of the conversations. And again, as Trent said too, prioritize things that we were either a little naive about, like the whole session management, kicking someone that AFK'd. Like, we were like, oh, if someone disconnects, that needs to work like flawlessly. You know, players need to be able to continue moving on, but no one's ever just going to willfully, you know, why would you tell lies on the internet? kind of like a level of naivety here, right? But so like that's something that we have to fix, right? And those are the easy ones to action on, because it's like, yes, that was a bad decision that I made earlier to not do that right now. But then there were things like a lot of games add controller support much later in their life cycle, but people are like, controllers must have controllers today. So we're like, okay, I guess controllers are really important to a certain subset of the community. So, you know, we changed the priority, and we've got people working on that right now. I think literally right now, probably. So it's been an exercise for sure. Go ahead,
Trent.
One of the hilarious things is, like Luke mentioned, stamina. It's like when we get feedback on stamina, the conversations that result, it's like, what is stamina? Why is stamina?
Stamina is a Hatfields and McCoy kind of thing.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's sure. Why does stamina exist in this game? Like, there is a drag down, dropout fight where we philosophically debate why there is stamina in the game and what purpose does it serve. And the truth of stamina is the game is a fundamental resource management game. You have finite resources that you need to manage to stop you from doing excessive behaviors. Like, imagine you could just unlimited attack everything in front of you. It would eventually, the gameplay would be boring, because you're not making those compromises. You're not making those decisions, because it's kind of like a bit of gambling, especially with some of your special abilities. It's like, Rico, am I gonna blow my backslash? Is there what's the highest payoff target I can do? Because it's going to be a minute and change before I get this thing back. So I need to make that gamble. And really, stamina is one of those key assets that you play with, that you manage, so that you can have this kind of agency to make the decisions you want, but the penalties that go along with it. And some days you feel like it's PhD level shit. What is stamina?
Dear Yorick, what is stamina? Why?
Why for is stamina?
Right. You know, hold one of the mushroom guys' skull on the thing and just talk to Time has flown, and I would love to keep you all here for like another hour of time to talk about all the other layers of stuff. For the folks who are really excited about jumping in, where are some places you can kind of get some good resources about, you know, playing the game, checking it out, and all those? And then I have one last question right after that. So where would you go tell people to go check out the game and get their hands on it for early access?
Well, I mean, absolutely pick it up in the Epic Game Store. And play it for yourself. But if you want to kind of see what the community is like and you want to see what people are talking about, we have a Discord server. It's linked on our website, which is mythforce.com. We also have, I mean, there's a fan-made wiki that is currently being worked on. Nice. But yeah, best place is, like, you know, grab the game on Epic and talk with the community in Discord.
All right. Last question before we let you go. Go ahead, Trent.
I would also suggest hitting up YouTube and search Mythforce, Because
Yeah.
watching people play this game, I hate watching people play games. I actually like watching people play this game because it's a pretty game and it's fun. And especially when people are talking, it's hilarious because they're usually losing their damn minds.
Oh, I've been watching a lot of Kind of Funny streams when they play.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Though I love them. They are family. They are also idiots when they play. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got that pressure cooker where everybody's under pressure and they're like, ah! My brain is melting down.
I light
It's
candles for Snowback Mike every day that he plays. I'm just like, oh, I love you, fam. Shoot that thing, please.
Everybody in the studio is watching them, and I guarantee you we are taking notes, and not always to make their lives easier.
Ramp it up. Just give them a special build that just botches them. Anyway, before we let you go, 30 seconds for this answer. If there was one 80s cartoon character that if you could pull him in for a special appearance in the game, who would you pull in and why? I'm going to go to you, Trent, first.
Oh, why'd you have to put me in?
Ha! Quick on the spot.
Mumra from Thundercats.
Ooh, that's a really good pull. I like that.
I just loved his scream.
Right? Right?
He was so awesome.
So good. So good. All right, Luke, you have the last word.
I mean, on the villains, Skeletor, iconic. You know,
Yeah.
he's the guy, right?
I mean, so good. His skincare routine was gorgeous and beautiful. You gotta, his bone care.
Below the neck.
Bone care? Maybe that's the way we have to think about it in terms of Skeletor. But yeah, I love those picks. Those are two of my favorites. Of course, I got to go with a Thundercat. And you pull in any one of them, and I'd be like, oh, that would make me really happy. Anywho, I love what you're all doing. I think the game is brilliant. I'm having a blast playing it. I need more friends to go and run some runs with, but I think you've nailed all those layers. It is super fun, really great to just pick up and play. The skill cap is high. You can still play around with a lot of the little elements that are bringing all those characters together. And I love the synergy around the archetypes that are in there because it just makes the game so fun to play. So again, Luke, Trent, thank you so much for being on Something Epic and hanging out with me for the time that we had. I could have had you on for so much longer to talk about all the other stuff that I have in my brain. Hopefully we can have you all come on Spawn on me sometime and talk more about it. Everybody at home, we're going to get up out of here for this episode of Something Epic. We'll be back next month with another episode. A massive thank you to our friends over at Epic Games for sponsoring our content. And we'll see you all next month with a new episode of Something Epic. Until then, see you soon. Much love and peace.